session for May 27th. Roll call?
24th.
What did I just read?
27th.
Oh, 24th. Red light is not on. And now it's on. We are now on air and called to order for our work session.
Chair Simpson?
Here.
Commissioner Flores?
Here.
Commissioner Reddick?
Here.
Commissioner Walker?
Here.
Commissioner Meyer?
Here.
Commissioner Pearson?
Here.
And Vice Chair Griffin is absent.
Can you also have the record show that Sally Robinson is on the line with us? Sally, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So our work session consists of the recreational marijuana legislation. Welcome.
Thank you. For our work session topics tonight, I'll briefly go over the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, or OLCC, recreational marijuana license types and that process, very briefly for those of you who haven't been following the process very closely. Also, we'll talk about the proposed code amendments and have a good discussion about that, and then talk about the next steps in the code amendment process. So Council placed the issue of recreational marijuana facilities ban on the November ballot. Until that time, there's a ban in place or a moratorium on recreational marijuana facilities, meaning that no facilities can go into Sherwood at this time until the voters decide in November. Once that issue is decided, if they do not vote to ban recreational marijuana facilities, then we have code language in place that will be there for rules and regulations specific to Sherwood. So only the voters can ban recreational marijuana facilities in its entirety. So the OLCC developed 5 different license types, really taking a whole seed to sale approach from producers who grow the marijuana to retailers who sell the marijuana. So they issue 5 different license types on an individual basis and control the regulations concerning those. So briefly, recreational marijuana licensed facilities on a statewide basis have the following rules: not to be on federal property at the same address as a liquor license holder, or at a medical marijuana dispensary or producing or processing site. Currently, there's a temporary allowance for recreational marijuana to be sold retail at a dispensary, but Sherwood does not have that regulation in place as there is the ban. And producers are the exception to this, but areas zoned residential, there cannot be any of the license types zoned exclusively for residential. And retailers cannot be located within 1,000 foot of a school, and that only applies to them. So our task at hand is to develop time, place, and manner regulations concerning recreational marijuana facilities and to determine the best locations suitable for the city as to where those different license types can be located. So the proposed code regulations, and I really stress proposed, this is a moving document. There's going to be public comment involved, discussion on your part, discussion with the Police Advisory Board. So probably one thing for certain is that this code language will change over time. This is staff's first stab at the legislation, at the rules concerning recreational marijuana facilities based on the online survey that we had and the different work sessions that we had. So this is what staff heard from that public engagement. And it's open to discussion, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion about the code language. So the code regulations include the definitions for the specific license types in our definitions section, the zoning designations, and I've prepared a table that designates the locations for the 5 different license types and what zone is appropriate, permitted or not permitted in that zone. There's also specific time, place, and manner regulations under the special use category of Chapter 1638, which is similar to where we place the medical marijuana dispensary rules in that same location. And then a Type 2 staff level land use process for the facilities. Now, if there was going to be new construction for a facility, we most likely have a site plan approval process. And so the different type would depend on the size of the facility being put into place. So this is if, for example, a facility was going into an existing building or an existing structure. It would be a type 2. So here's the table of the proposed zoning designations. The N stands for locations where it would not be permitted in our zones, and the P stands for permitted. On the top of the page are the different zoning designations. We have 4 different commercial zones and 3 different industrial zones with the 5 different license types. Highlighting some of the things that really need your input on are the retail sales operator. Those locations generally considered a commercial enterprise. Where's the best fit for Sherwood for those locations, as well as the producer, limiting those to the light industrial or general industrial, which is different than what the state regulations are. And with respect to the processors, also again in the industrial zones, the wholesale and lab, it seemed from the conversations that we had during the work session, there wasn't as much concern because they were really not open to the public generally, and their impact in the surrounding neighborhood would be more limited than the other designations. Here's the map that everyone saw at the work sessions. It shows our an aerial of the city and the different zoning type overlaid. The dark lavender is our general industrial zone, mostly located off of Tualatin Sherwood Road and Galbraith. The Tonkin employment area is outlined. That's another employment zone. Another industrial zone. Employment industrial is located south, although not yet annexed into the city. Light industrial lavender, and then the different red gradations of red are our commercial zones. I've outlined the locations of our parks to show you where those are located. And then the schools are highlighted with a little yellow school zone. So that's kind of the blank map of what we're working at with respect to the different zones. The next map shows the Oregon Liquor Control Commission's 1,000-foot buffer imposed for schools on the retail component of the retail facility types. So you can see what the different areas where that's ruled out and the zoning designations there. You really have to have that. So the next map shows what's proposed, which includes the parks buffer, as well as the school buffer for the retail facilities, and also limited to the general commercial zone as a proposal, mostly along 99W and the north side of the Six Corners area, along with the light industrial and the general industrial zones. So that those buffers are kind of transparent in green around the park areas. One of the main concerns that we heard in the work session was we really don't want to have any type of facilities in Old Town, so including the parks buffer and also limiting the retail commercial zoning designation limits the availability of adding facilities to our Old Town area, because that is zoned exclusively retail commercial, as if not residential. Here's an example of the medical marijuana dispensary buffer that's outlined in orange. That would be an 1,000-foot buffer from retail, and it shows kind of how big a circle that is, the radius for 1,000 feet on the medical marijuana facility that's located north of Tualatin Sherwood Road, and about what properties would then be excluded from having any type of retail facility, for example, or other medical marijuana dispensary. Moving on to the time, place, and manner, again, limiting to general and light industrial zones. Staff's proposing indoor production only. It seems like we heard a lot of concerns about grow sites and that they were visible from the street, and so if we limit it to indoor production only, that might offer some, not to really see the products and have better security measures that way. And we don't really have a lot of area to have grow operations anyway in the general vacant land in the general industrial zones. Also adding some odor mitigation requirements to that to producers as well as processors. Oh, moving on to the license types and the time, place, and manner. So this is about producers, one of the license types. Also, we heard a lot of interest in making sure we got the retail sales operator licenses correct in Sherwood. The zoning would proposed is general commercial, light industrial, and general industrial. Hours of operation would be 10 to 8 p.m. That's similar to the medical marijuana dispensaries. Security measures would be required, similar to the medical marijuana dispensaries. And then one of the things that's different from the rec marijuana OLCC rules are the walk-up, drive-through, mobile delivery, and those kind of things. That would be added to any retail operation, a prohibition on those being allowed. And then the 1,000-foot buffers that we talked about a little bit earlier concerning retail or medical marijuana facilities, and then adding the public park and plaza buffers.
What do we define the school as?
The school is a public or private school that is catering to children under 19 years of, generally considered for 19 years of age. And so both the DHS or the OHA, Oregon Health Authority, they have the buffers, and I checked which ones that they included in those on their site, and they include all of our public and private schools that I know about, and similar matching buffer. So with respect to processors, wholesalers, labs, and testing, that would be the general or light industrial zone, which would be pretty standard for what a processor would be if it were producing cheese, for example, or processing cheese. Wholesaler allowed in the office, retail, or general commercial zone, as well as the general or light industrial zone, and then the lab or testing, that's that same.
I don't think that's what your chart says. So let me see if I.
It is.
You're saying the.
Oh, the
Lab.
Oh,
You said processor or wholesaler.
Oh, the wholesaler was just general commercial only, similar to the retail sales. And
okay.
then the
lab and testing is one. Okay.
And then the lab or testing is that. So the wholesaler just general commercial, not office or retail commercial.
Okay, I got it.
Thanks. So talking a little bit about where we are in the process, we've had some public engagement and as well as had several, developed the work plan, met with police advisory boards. So here we are with some proposed draft language, and depending on how much tweaking you'd like to do, we could have another work session or moving forward to the public hearing process, which requires the 35-day notice to DLCD as well as a 21-day comment period. And the Planning Commission hearings make the recommendation to the City Council, ultimately making the final decision. We're bumping up that final timeline of November, the November ballot, but also really wanting to get this legislation done before summer or as close as possible of when we can get the most feedback from people before their attention goes elsewhere during the summer.
I was just going to add a couple things because at the last work session there was a comment, Jeff's here tonight, where they had asked us to reach out to the school district to see if we could, conduct a public work session there or submit some information out to the public through their email system. And we did get a response from the school district, and they said no on both instances because they choose to remain entirely neutral on these issues. They respect everybody's opinion on whether or not they just didn't want to take a position on this. And then I would also state that the Police Advisory Board and myself were at the Community Resources Fair this last weekend, and we reached out to quite a few people, and it was funny, one of the Police Advisory Board members, Laura, was standing there and she says, "I don't think people care or they're generally, I think that the ban will not really pass because they don't seem to be very interested in it. We had some people that we talked to. We talked to probably, I don't know, Sean, probably 50 or 60 people. So from that perspective, we continue to reach out, and the Police Advisory Board is going to go to the Altered Arts Festival and have a table there as well to share the information that we're generating here too. Yeah, and there's also the information that we handed out, which is essentially the abbreviated code language at that services fair is available on the back counter if anybody wants, and then they can always contact Michelle or the planning department for additional information.
Based on this time frame, will we go to hearing before or after cruise-in?
Probably after.
We'll go to hearing after cruise-in, so there's an opportunity there for another booth.
Yeah, and it's important to note that just because we go to public hearings doesn't mean that the legislation can't change.
I
It can
understand
change
that,
in your hearings, and it can change in the council hearings too. We're just wanting to get as much information out as do you in advance of those.
yeah, no, and as exciting as planning commission meetings are and how much time and effort we spend trying to get our friends and neighbors to come, we still are challenged every time to get people engaged in the process. And I have to commend staff for reaching out and going to these events, because I know you guys have lives too, and to spend your weekends coming here to man booths is very much appreciated, because it's a really important process, and to get more people even just aware of the process so they don't go, well, why didn't you tell us about it? Well, we tried, and cruise-in, I think, is a good opportunity for people to see a sign and at least know the process is going on. I don't know, and again, cost being no object, I don't know if having business card sized handouts so that instead of trying to engage them with a conversation, there could be a link on the business card to say, if you don't get all the information, here's a business card and you can go to our website when you're not looking at cars today. I don't know if that's even possible for staff to print out little cheapy business cards.
So I'm going to chime in, and we certainly will look into that. Cruise-in is not a city event, it's a chamber event, and I don't know whether or not there is a cost associated with having a formal booth. There's certain events like Music on the Green or the Community Services Fair that are a little bit easier for us to say, hey, we want a booth too. So we'll look into that, but that may be something, if we can't do that, we will try to do something else through the summer. And I know Brad and Connie last year did some ad hoc type things at the Robin Hood Festival that weren't formal, but so we'll look into that. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about the draft language that was presented to us?
Yeah, I have a question. The draft language shows that medical retail and recreational retail cannot be in the same building, and I was under the impression that temporarily they can be.
Yes.
So, but the draft legislation says that they can, as I read it.
Well, right. So there are temporary rules in place that allow, because retail licenses haven't been issued, that allow medical marijuana dispensaries to sell both recreational marijuana and medical marijuana.
Right.
The city in November decided not to do that even before the ban was put in place. And so since the ban is in place, there's also a ban on selling retail marijuana, having a facility or selling that locally here. That allowing that co-location by the state legislature expires in December of this year, December 31st. So there's a small window in November that gives the cities a chance to opt back in and allowing both medical marijuana and retail marijuana. They can do that, or they can continue with that ban for another month or so.
But we as a city had decided we didn't want that.
That's correct.
Regardless of what the state wants.
Okay, so further clarification then. If we cannot cohabit, then we have to have two separate buildings. And they have to be 1,000 feet apart, correct?
Yes.
So now you're talking about establishing two centers that require additional police coverage, as opposed to having potentially two buildings side by side, which would be more efficient in economics of scale for police surveillance. But the way this is setting up right now is you're now talking about two entirely separate buildings at a minimum 1,000 feet apart, which means you're expanding out your zones of coverage, and you're expanding out your zones of overlap and possible interference with your other restricted areas. I'm only saying that for clarification. I'm not arguing one way or the other.
Well, right, and that's what is proposed, and that's one side of the coin with that argument, and then that's up for discussion if they want to proceed with that.
There's every chance, and it could be that as of December, the state won't allow it anyway.
Well, there'll be a medical marijuana dispensary. So
No,
what
but
I
as
think,
of December, the state might
say,
yeah, we
marry
can't
these two.
cohabitate anyway.
well, right, the state has said that. The OLCC has said that they cannot be at the same
But we now
location.
temporarily have a little okay.
That's right.
So-
But I think
So if we do that, we're grandfathered in even if the state changes its mind.
Commissioner Pearson was saying if we have, what's proposed is an 1,000-foot buffer for dispensaries and retail facilities. That's the proposal, but that's up to the city to decide whether we want to have that buffer. We could have them nearby, and his argument is then they could be next door to one another, and so then kind of economies of scale, the police can monitor one area rather than,
I understand his
The
point. My
buffer.
question was, the state might change it again in December, but if you get in that little tiny window, we'd be grandfathered in? Is that what he's saying? If we
Wouldn't matter.
wouldn't have, you still wouldn't be able to do it, so.
the city,
Takes it away after
So
December.
if recreational and medicinal were looked at as the same by the state legislature, she's asking that if they decide that we're going to just merge these two programs and regulate them through that, since we would have this legislation in place, we would already be grandfathered to keep them separate. And that's the question.
right, that would be the discretion of the local
Or would
jurisdictions.
it still be okay?
We can make it more restrictive than the state.
Just keeping all our options open here, folks.
Sure.
Any more questions or comments regarding the draft language that we have before us right now? I know we have the draft language. We will take public hearings. Do we have another work session with the Police Advisory Board prior to our Planning Commission hearing?
That's something to consider tonight. They would meet the third week in June would be their next meeting date. So that kind of falls between your meetings and that vacant. And we have on June 14th a rezone hearing for the Planning Commission, and then on June 28th is the hearing concerning the Sherwood Apartments.
So when do you expect this to come to hearing before the commission?
Well, that's something that I wanted to discuss with you this
Oh, okay.
evening to see what your thoughts were. Most likely the earliest that we could have a hearing would be June 28th because of the 35-day public notice period for DLCD, for the DLCD notice. That would be the
And
earliest.
that's assuming you didn't want to have
A second work session or anything like that.
The public work session on the 26th, which I wasn't, which I wasn't at, is that the same format as the one prior with the tables? And how was that, well attended was that?
It was similar to the first session,
Different
and
people? Or the same people?
a few different people, maybe I would say around 10 different people attended. And we talked primarily the same issue, but a little bit more details about more of the time, place, and manner regulations and feeling that out a little bit more rather than familiarizing the different license types and what those meant.
Can you restate what's already on our calendar for the 28th?
The Sherwood Plaza Apartments.
Okay. Because I definitely want to give the Police Advisory Board an opportunity to meet and provide official comment to us. And so I don't know if that really, if they're meeting on the 23rd or 21st, They meet the same night as the council?
No, they meet on a Thursday.
So they meet on the 23rd. The 6th,
Because it's the 3rd? Mhm.
Thursday is the 16th. So if they meet on the 16th, that's an opportunity for staff to take what the police advisory board said and incorporate it into our packets before we would go to hearing. If we wanted to push it as early as June 28th, or we would then, which my calendar flipped to August, would be July 12th.
Which, from my perspective, I think if you want to try and hit some of the summer events, and I'm not sure when the Altered Arts Festival is, but that's
June 4th.
Can't hear you too well, Brad.
So that's when the police advisory board was going to have another table at the Altered Arts Festival.
Uh-huh.
And so it would seem to me that we would want to push that into July. So your first hearing would be in July as opposed to trying to squeeze it into the 28th of June.
And the Robin Hood Festival's the 16th. So if we schedule the hearing for July 26th, we would have potentially had a little bit of time at the cruise in if we can shoehorn our way in to cruise in, or have more power to usurp the Robin Hood Festival on the 16th. And then having the hearing on the 26th would enable, it just gives everybody an opportunity to have visited a city event and seen that this hearing's going to be put up. And
When did the movies on the screen start?
August. Anybody have any comments about scheduling the hearing for July 26th? Too early, too late?
That seems about right to me. I like that, be able to get to some of those other events.
Okay.
And then the police advisory board could actually have, their meeting in June and provide comment. I really like.
Just going to point out the obvious. Have this meeting at the end of July. You got August, September, and October left. 3 months left before November rolls around.
Yep.
We only have 5 months to go till November.
Yep. But July 26th enables us to have a hearing and put it to council, and they would either have one of the hearings, and it seems likely they could have their hearing in August sometime.
Yes.
And then it won't.
We would not get into a July hearing even if we had our hearing on the 28th. They're so booked, the council's so booked out. So
Okay.
we would be looking at an August hearing at the earliest anyhow.
Anyway.
And then that gives them August, September, so we're not in the middle of the political season at the same time that they're trying to have a hearing that is not related to the ban. It's just an in case. I think that was our other thing, is to not try and confuse the two situations. So everybody kind of.
The Sally thing.
Sally, are you hearing what we're saying? Are you see any conflict with the council schedule of us going to hearing at the end of July and then council hearing it in August sometime?
Well, it all depends on how much comes through during the summer, because we usually only meet once a month. And so if you're shooting for August, I don't know what that August meeting is going to be, whether it's the first or the third Tuesday. But just keep in mind that we usually only meet once during the summer, once a month.
Oh, Tom indicated that hearing would be August 3rd, so that really wouldn't be enough.
The 16th.
Oh, the 16th is when they were meeting. Sorry, I thought 3 meant 3rd. Sorry.
The third Tuesday would be the 16th. So
That would give enough time to, if you had approved one hearing, then you could move on to the August.
yeah, and worst case, then you're only pushing it out to the first meeting of September, because then they'll start back again with 2 in September, right?
Well, and keep in mind, for the most part, unless there was an emergency situation, they have a first and second reading. So it's probably going to be, if they have a meeting in August, they'll have a meeting in September to do a second reading, but then the ordinance takes effect 30 days. So I think you're fine as long as you're, you have your final reading by mid-October, early to mid-October.
Well, technically, the ordinance won't go into effect in one way or the other until after the November vote.
Yes, you're right. But if you had the ordinance adopted at the end of October, then, and the ordinance and the ban did not pass, then you could potentially have a window with with no clear regulation if we were going to do something stricter.
So being completed by September means everything's
Right,
wrapped up,
right,
and the 30-day window for the council
right.
clause, or whenever it takes effect.
You got even less time than you thought.
No, I mean, I think we're doing okay. I think that as long as if we are able to go to council in August, I think that we should be fine.
Yeah, and keep in mind, if it gets to the point where there's controversy on this issue, and I'm not sure that there will be by the time we've vetted it through the summer, then the council could always choose to adopt it by emergency, which eliminates that 30-day window.
Right.
And also the council has the option of, if memory serves, a unanimous vote on an issue, then it doesn't require a second reading.
Right, and that's the way they would have to adopt that with basically by emergency. They can do away with the first and second reading, but they have to all be there and they have to be unanimous in their approval.
All right. So, all right. Do you need a motion, a head nod, just general consensus that hearing, Planning Commission, July 26th for recreational marijuana code language? All right.
We're all nodding
That
our heads.
is work session done.
Oh, okay.
Or do you want more input from us?
Well, if you had any, had any comments about any of the proposed language.
I didn't see any. I guess it looks pretty good to me. I didn't see anything. Nothing jumped out as. No one said that. Why did she do that? It all looked in line with what we've been doing and hearing. And I guess I spoke a little early, but I thought I wanted to hear from the public before we start trying to change language when we haven't had any hearings or other opportunities. Anybody see anything that I missed that needs to be addressed immediately?
A couple of things that I noticed kind of in review. I was pretty silent as to the size of any of the facilities. Would you like to get more feedback on that issue? Like, say, if there is a large producer or anything like that, if you want to have a different process potentially, or for retail, based on any zoning, would you want to have a square footage determination? I know that we did that for medical marijuana, but I didn't really address that in this language at this time. I'm going to wait to kind of see if anyone's interested in that issue.
Sure. Same place we did for medical. Just use those same parameters, then we can see what those were and discuss them.
For retail facilities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why reinvent the wheel? Why not just adopt those?
Yeah.
Those
That size
specifications?
limit?
Start that in the language and
Makes
then.
sense.
Okay.
Since we just got through spending a large amount of time talking about in the industrial zones and buildings and everything else, as you said, processing is making cheese or doing this stuff. It's still processing. We never discussed a specific designation between differentiations of product types. So we've done that. So we're assuming this is a commercial manufacturing operation. The retail operation is using the same hours that we did them. And I kind of got the impression from since it never came up, I think everybody kind of assumed that we were working on the same building size as the medical. So I think I've seen a lot of nodding of the heads going, yeah, just stick with that.
Okay. I'll add that to the language that we.
I'd actually put it as a question mark, but I didn't want to be the only person bugging you with questions. But
Well, I asked first, I guess.
okay, good. And then, so then I get to ask my own question. Then Old Town, so your little map with all the colors in it, based on the way the language is written right now, precludes any retail outlets from occurring in Old Town, but would not restrict it wouldn't prevent the lab. That's the only one that would be able to cite in Old Town as lab testing, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's just the way the code's written. Old Town's not able to have any of the other 4 recreational marijuana types?
Well, our lab and
No, that's not the question. The question was, well, the other 4 types. So
the other 4 types
are
could not be
allowed in
low.
recreational, commercial, or residential.
They could.
Lab down there though, maybe?
The 5 types, the only one that could be located in Old Town, as the proposal shows now, would be the lab.
Okay.
And are we okay with having the lab down there? Or do we want it, we handle Old Town differently all around otherwise. It has its own overlay, it'd be pretty simple to just say, preclude it down.
That was,
How anybody feels about that?
that's what we had heard at the work sessions, was precluding it from
Everything.
Old Town completely, so.
Any license types. So I could take that off the retail commercial.
Or just add a restriction in Old Town that doesn't allow.
We have an Old Town overlay, so you
Oh.
could just put it in the Old Town overlay that all,
A footnote.
a footnote, yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for letting me ask my question. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, very good job, thank you. Sally, did we get everything that you had questions on?
Yes, for now.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, are we gonna move into
We'll
regular?
switch chairs.
Switching chairs. All right, we're gonna close the work session for real and call the regular meeting to order. We do another roll call.
Chair Simpson,
Here.
Commissioner Flores,
Here.
Commissioner Reddick,
Here.
Commissioner Walker,
Here.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Pearson,
Here.
and Vice Chair Griffin is absent.
Thank you. We have a consent agenda consisting of the March 29th, April 12th, and April 26th Planning Commission minutes.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All in favor? Any discussion, excuse me. All right, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Council liaison comments or announcements. Councilor Robinson?
Thank you. The only real comment that I have is twofold. One, thank you all for your very detailed and extensive review and continuing effort to get the public involved in the medical marijuana regulations. It's really nice to have a commission that's so on top of things and a staff that is very willing to tackle this issue, knowing that they might not even go into effect if the ban in fact passes. So thank you very much for all your time and effort. We as a council certainly really appreciate your efforts. And secondly, I may not be at the next meeting, and thereafter I will be out of commission for a month or two since I'm having some heart surgery. So I want to thank you for your continuing efforts in the future. If I don't, well, I'll watch them on TV as I'm recovering. So I may or may not have another representative attend those meetings, but again, thank you very much. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you very much, and keep us updated. Yes.
We wish you well.
Yes. Very much so.
Thank you.
Staff announcements.
Oh boy, do I have a lot for you.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So this week, tomorrow, TriMet will be opening the bus line, formally opening the bus line between Tualatin and Sherwood. Isn't it this week? The opening?
June
6th.
June 6th. But is there a
May 31st is the first ride, and there is there's a first ride, and then there's sort of a celebration that will culminate at the Old Spaghetti Factory at about 10:30 on May 31st, next week.
So what she said. Sorry.
You know where the stops
Never
are?
argue with the boss.
And I'm not sure where the stops are, but I think you can go on to TriMet's.
Yeah, I can get you that information. 'Cause I don't have them off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that information and probably have something posted on our website as well. I know the line will and actually at the Taco Bell Sherry's location. But then there'll be some stops on Tualatin Sherwood Road as well.
I went to the TriMet website maybe 2 weeks ago, and they didn't even have the bus number on it.
It's not
Oh.
there.
Line 97.
Yes.
I looked for it and
I found the 97, but no
information.
stops.
Yeah, I do have a map that was prepared by them when they were looking at the stops, and I'll confirm that those haven't changed at all. And if they haven't, I'll make sure that they're up on the website as well as emailed to the Planning Commission.
So looking back in time, the community gardens opened on last night. Tomorrow there will be a local trails advisory committee meeting for the Cedar Creek Trail. The public's invited to those. I'm not sure if they allow public testimony at those, but those are the trail advisory committee. So I would assume that they would allow some opportunity for public input. You received an email, some of you received an email today from a property owner that's concerned, and those are noted, but at this point you don't need to take any action. I guess if it comes before you, then it's something that you would want to consider at that time. I'm not sure that the trail will come before the Planning Commission. And for that matter, that portion of the trail is not being considered for construction at this time. That's only design at this point in time. The only part that will be constructed with this first phase will be the phase that's south of Highway 99 between here and Tonkin Road. So also June 1st there will be an open house on the Cedar Creek Trail, so the public will be invited to that. That will be here at City Hall, and I imagine I'm not sure what time they were going to start that, so I'll 6:30. So I was going to get back to you on that. And then finally, I sent an email out to people, or Kirsten did, thank you Kirsten, about the Sherwood West project, an update basically. So there's a couple developments like that the Portland Tribune had put out an article talking about how Metro may have underestimated the amount of land that they needed for housing, so they're going to revisit that. That's not any different than the schedule that we told the folks out there in Sherwood West. The thing that might change is there might be more of a push to bring land in this next go around in 2018, so that could speed up the process. The other thing that would lend itself to making things happen out there sooner is the passage of Senate Bill 1573, which essentially did away with voter-approved annexation. Just to note, the city of Corvallis is challenging that, or they have indicated that they intend to challenge that. So I think that things are still enough in flux out there, but I just wanted to try and keep people in the loop. So if you didn't get that email, then it's because you weren't on the Sherwood West email listserv. If you didn't, then I'll make sure that we also send those out to the Planning Commission so you guys are kept abreast of that.
Yeah,
So.
that'd be good.
And finally, I just wanted to mention, because Commissioner Reddick and I email about this stuff all the time, I talked to you last time about FEMA adopting some new maps, and that we would have to, within 6 months, go forward and adopt those maps, or people could lose their flood insurance here in town. We're still continuing to go down that route, that there will be an update, but they also, the National Marine Fisheries Service, just this week issued a biological opinion, which kind of throws some things into flux, and we don't really know where it sits. So our representative from DLCD is trying to figure out what the biological opinion means to us in our adoption of future regulations. And I guess we're just going to have to wait and see, and hopefully I'll have that. I plan on getting the maps adopted at a minimum, just so that people that currently have flood insurance here in town are protected, but it's just frustrating from a staff perspective and a workload perspective that we might have to do two processes, simply because somebody throws out an opinion.
What's the 6-month deadline?
The 6-month deadline is to adopt
Not
the
what,
maps.
but when is it?
Oh,
Sorry.
well, we just got the map a week and a half ago, so
Okay,
6 months from then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like the clock's been ticking for 2 months
No,
already.
I've been doing some legwork, and I imagine what we'll do is we'll do a work session with the property owners that are directly affected by the flood maps, any changes or amendments. And Washington County has done that once before, but I think we'll do a local one, and then I'll show them what that means from what our perspective is on that, just the flood insurance. I'm not sure how much we'll get into the biological opinion, but then we will then bring that legislation to them, what we think that we're going to bring to you, and then bring that out here in a public work session. I mean, they're the ones that are most impacted by it, immediately impacted. Obviously, there are other stakeholders that will want to talk about what can and can't go into a floodplain. But I think, we want to get the property owners that are immediately affected by it. We want to get their perspective and input.
Since they've already, adopting the maps doesn't necessarily, can we change the maps?
No.
So,
I was just going to chime in. It could be a very frustrating process, especially given how much public outreach and input we want to do. Our understanding is these maps are set, they can't change. We have to go through this public process, but we have to adopt the maps and we can't change the maps. So it potentially could be, and which is why Brad is going to do this front end, contact with the property owners that are directly affected so they understand it, so that we don't have people coming to you and to the council wanting you to change something that you really don't have any ability to change.
so we're adopting it so that when we make land use decisions, we are using the same maps that FEMA's already provided.
Correct.
Got it.
So they had 9 years to build their maps, and we have 6 months to adopt them.
Well, Aaron Love and federal government.
Unfunded mandates.
There you go.
That's it for my announcements, if you guys had any questions.
All right. So we're moving on to community comments. Community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda this evening. And for anybody wishing to speak under community comments or under the public hearing, we have blue sheets of paper in the back, and we ask you just to fill out a blue card and turn it into the recording secretary or Brad. And I don't see anybody rushing up for community comments.
Nope.
Or maybe not. Okay. No, I think she's just reading the card. So if you wish to testify tonight for the public hearing, same blue card needs to be filled out. So speaking of that, we now are moving into old business, which is our public hearing. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on PA 16-02, public or commercial parking within the Old Town overlay. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to testify and provide information to the Planning Commission concerning the public or commercial parking within the Old Town overlay. The Commission will conduct tonight's hearing in the following order. Staff will present the staff report, followed by questions, if any, by the Planning Commission for staff. We will then open the hearing for public testimony, and each person's time will be limited as follows. The applicant will have 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each. The rebuttal from the applicant is a remainder of their original 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. There'll be final comments by staff up to 15 minutes. Questions of staff, if any, by the Commission, and then discussion and deliberation by the Commission. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the recording secretary. The Planning Commission Chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the Chair. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as the hearing will be recorded. You need to depress the button if the light is not green until it turns green, and please speak clearly into the microphone. The Planning Commission is making a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council is the final hearing authority on this matter. Any appeal is to the Land Use Board of Appeals. The Planning Department, and this is a legislative matter, so there is no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest.
Yes, ma'am.
So the Planning Department will now present the staff report.
So again, PA 1602, which is the Old Town Parking Amendment. The background on this is that on occasion the city fields complaints from business owners and other people that live in downtown that there's not enough parking in Old Town. The Urban Renewal Agency owns the old Hollywood Theater lot, and they would like to, at some point in time in the future, put that onto the market, and wanted to ensure that there would be a location that they could relocate that parking to, and identified and purchased 2 lots right out here behind Old Ray's Produce off of First Street to make that happen. And they realized that those lots were split zoned, So they had to do something. And initially they thought, well, we see this coming down in the future. We might have to visit this again and look at locations within residential zones that we might have to put parking. So the Urban Renewal Agency, who is also the City Council, determined that there was a need for this amendment. As a result of the testimony that you received on April 12th and the split vote by the Planning Commission, the city went back and spoke with the Urban Renewal Agency and talked to them about the concerns that were raised by the public and you, and decided to amend the language and further limit the scope of the amendment. So if you look up, it says proposed parking lot. That is the location of the proposed parking lot. I don't have a pointer. I used to have a pointer. Here we go. So the public parking lot is right here is where they would propose it. And the language then originally was that the Urban Renewal Agency would propose to amend the language to allow non-accessory parking lots, meaning those are like, we consider this lot behind City Hall accessory to City Hall. So it would be permitted with City Hall. But non-accessory then is standalone parking for public and commercial on residentially zoned properties in the Old Town overlay as a conditional use, provided they were adjacent to a collector or arterial. And that's where that language stopped. So it opened up quite a few properties along Main Street, Pine, 2nd and 3rd Street that could be potentially affected by that. And the language then that was added was, and the property was vacant as of May 1st, 2016. And I moved the language from the 1612, which is our residential code language, so that it would be specific to language in 16162 in the Old Town overlay. And the result of that new revised further restricting language would be that there's only one lot in Old Town that would be privy to this language, and that is that lot. There's a second lot that was at, initially I questioned whether or not it would be, but that's the lot over here that the school district is building the two homes on, and we have an approved job shed or shed on either one of those, so that it's not vacant as of May 1st, so it's really only that one lot. The conditional use would still apply. These are the 5 criteria that apply to conditional uses. I won't go through them. I won't belabor you with that, but it goes through a public hearing, so everybody within 1,000 feet would be notified of it. It would come to Planning Commission because it is an Old Town. Typically, our conditional uses go to hearings officer, so it would come to Planning Commission as opposed to going to the hearings officer. The text amendment criteria is that the amendment has to be based upon a need. I've indicated that need has been established by the Urban Renewal Agency, who's the council, and it has to be in accordance with the transportation planning rule of the state. And essentially that rule, just again for your information, says that you can't approve anything that is going to affect the functional classification of a road within the state network. And this proposal has been considered by ODOT, considered by our city engineer, and it wouldn't have that effect. It wouldn't affect the classification of any of the streets. We did send out a new notice that was sent out to everybody in Old Town, the same people that we sent it out to last time. We didn't receive any public comments. Personally, there was a comment on Facebook today that somebody had sent in that was basically saying that they just wanted to make sure that it only applied to lots that were vacant as of May 1st. Wanted to make sure we were following through with that language. And that is the language that is proposed before you tonight. And with that, based on the findings of fact and the information in the record, staff would propose or recommend that you approve the legislation as proposed. And if you have any questions, then I'm available for questions. Yes, sir.
Clearly the lot is empty now. If we approve this, then it becomes a parking lot, effectively adding more parking that is already needed. And it will be there until URA or whatever sells the other lot. But in the meantime, by bringing this vacant lot that's been sitting there doing nothing for as long as I've lived here, now becomes an additional parking lot.
No, it still has to go through the conditional use
So,
process to
yeah.
become a parking
With
lot.
this language, you're not approving a parking lot in that location.
But we're making it available to become one.
Correct.
Which we couldn't be before. When
Correct.
we made it available.
Correct.
And we're coming up to festivals. We need parking. Okay, so an additional factor for approving this.
Once we build something on it, any property that the way the language reads, it's vacant as of May 1st, so as soon as something's built on it, it's no longer applicable for a parking lot.
Correct. It would be only to this property.
Pardon me?
That's correct. This would be the only property. I mean, once you build something on here, it would no longer be vacant in this language. It essentially has the same effect.
Vacant as of May 1st, the way it's written.
Right.
Could
Right.
you say is vacant and with, I mean, it has to also be vacant. Could you have like a small building and then make the rest parking? Is that no longer
No, I
vacant?
mean, it has to be vacant. I mean, we've identified this one clearly in this presentation and then in the record that this would be the only one that's vacant.
So if someone decided to make their lot vacant, like I owned a building in Old Town and I decided to take it out tomorrow, it wouldn't not apply because it's not vacant as of May 1st. The only vacant residential lot in Old Town abutting a collector or arterial street is this one single lot.
Yes, ma'am.
What about this lot on the corner of Second?
No, again,
It's commercial,
Oh, that's commercial.
isn't it?
which one are you talking about?
The gas station lot.
Oh, it is
The old gas
commercial.
station?
It's zoned commercial.
Next to the symposium.
The one by the symposium.
That's commercial.
Okay.
So everything along Pine here is commercial.
So it can be a parking lot.
It
if
could
they
be a
choose.
parking lot, correct. It's not zoned residential,
And we're not affecting that change.
correct.
How do you
So it's only
pinpoint
changed.
May 1st, 10 years from now? Is it based on tracking a building demo permit?
If they could come back to this record,
Yeah.
yeah. And we do it all the time. We always have to go back to old records anyhow.
So it's not the only lot in Old Town that could be parking. It's just the only lot that applies to this particular code.
It's
Because
the only residentially zoned property in Old Town.
So it doesn't mean there isn't going to be other parking.
Correct. Correct.
Could be potentially parking.
Correct.
Yeah, but this is the only one right now.
That's residentially zoned.
There's residential zone there.
Ever.
That is going to be changed by our action tonight. All right, so we now have an opportunity for the applicant to present his testimony.
Good evening, Chair Simpson and Planning Commission members. We certainly won't take 30 minutes of your time. I think we had a very good conversation about this last time, and really, I think the reason we're back is because we heard from Planning Commission some comments relative to need and took that seriously. It's hard to prove something 20 or 30 years from now unless you've done a very expensive detailed study, which we haven't done at this point in time. I think there clearly is a need in this sector of Old Town, and I think that's been talked about for a long time. So I think we certainly want to address that, and one of the reasons that we've been talking about this for a long time. We also heard, some really good comments from the citizens relative to concerns about historic structures, the character of the neighborhoods in Old Town, and wanting to make sure that there wasn't an opportunity just to go tear things down and to construct parking lots, which, as we said, wasn't our intention. We were trying to think long term, but they also made some really good points. And so we did this language in this particular way in order to address kind of both of the comments that we heard. We're open to other ideas, of course, if you have them, but ultimately, it's our desire to work on the parking in this area of Old Town by building a parking lot in the location off of First Street. So, Keith, you have anything to add?
Excuse me, I have a cold. I'm Keith Jones. I'm the applicant's consultant, and I put together the record and the application. So my job was just to go through the comprehensive plan and the zoning code and just make sure that the record complied with that. And I found that it did, and there definitely was, as was talked about, a need to provide more parking. And as Tom has indicated, I think this is a good site to provide that. And granted, it's next to another commercial property that allows it. I think it makes sense to include this particular piece of property. And as Brad has indicated, kind of looking around, it is the only parcel. And Tom and I worked together on amending the proposed code language to ensure that that's the case. And I think as staff has shown, this is the only site. So we're not going to be looking at taking out other homes to accommodate it.
Yeah, and the reason I chose May 1st, 2016 is because I'm aware of some properties that are going to be coming down along Oregon Street and Ash Street there for the assisted living facility project, and I don't want people suddenly saying, oh, well, you kind of tricked us. You're turning that into parking lots as well. We're not. That's actually privately owned and plans on developing. Yeah, so we just wanted to make sure that our intent was clear that we didn't plan on this spreading significantly. One thing I'll mention is I was looking through this section of code in chapter 16.162.040. It's talking about conditional uses. And we're adding item C to that. But I also noticed item A had some old references to some code sections which have moved because of the residential code changes. So just a thought, you might want to tackle that at some point in time before it gets to City Council, just to clean that up. So
Cleanup stuff is a full-time job.
I know. So other than that, we'll probably save our time for rebuttal if necessary, but we hope that this is a good balance and strikes a compromise that will make everybody happy.
Thank you. And I want to thank staff, applicant / urban renewal agency and council all at once to say it's really difficult as a planning commission to have citizens come before us on quasi-judicial matters that are very prescribed, and we have to do what the code says. And when we get to these legislative matters, whether it be something like a parking lot or a comprehensive plan or the recreational marijuana, to see that people's testimony affect change, and that as a council, staff, applicant, you heard what was being said and were able to come back with a response that is, to me, so much more positive. And I very much appreciate you guys taking that extra step and doing all that extra work to hear what people said and come back with a solution that seems a lot more palatable, that is not a big scary thing. It's a defined piece of property that could be affected. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And one comment that I'll make is I think Brad has assumed that we have actually had conversations with council regarding this proposal. We have not. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because they're the final decision maker.
Oh, okay.
And so we certainly know that they want to build a parking lot here. We've had that conversation. But as far as this language is going, we've intentionally kept them out of the conversation so that there can't be any bias perceived or otherwise once the decision gets to their table. So.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. All right, so I have not received any blue card. Oh, there we go. So I now have a blue card that I have just been announced to disregard because the questions have been answered. So does anybody else wish to provide any testimony or make any comments regarding in favor of the application or against the application, or even neutral testimony regarding the application? All right, and all that time you save for rebuttal unnecessarily? All right. Does staff have anything they would like to add which specifically addresses a question raised during testimony? Just reading the script.
No.
Okay. So, to the point of order, does any member of the commission have any questions regarding clarification of the application or the changes that are being proposed?
No.
All right, then the public testimony portion is now closed. All right, time for deliberation. is there a motion?
Good, give me the form. Oh, Chris, you want to do it?
It's on your way.
Oh, it's on its way? Okay, which one do I read?
The one that says legislative.
Legislative. Help me find it there, fella. That's it.
You thought Russell's job as vice chair was easy, didn't you?
Yeah, I know.
I don't see the word.
So that's why I'm never missing a meeting, by the way. We don't see when it says approve application with conditions, no?
No, we are only recommending,
Approve the application.
we are recommending approval to council.
I don't see one that says anything like that, do you? That's it, I don't see one that says approval.
Unless there's another one inside of here. Are they the same?
It's not just my bad.
Can we do it off?
Recommend approval of council.
Okay, sorry, we didn't have the right page.
With
Cheryl.
conditions and findings? Or as presented?
As
There you go.
report,
Number
there
eight,
you
number
go.
eight.
Sorry, couldn't find it.
You got
Okay,
Second page.
Page 2.
page 2, we only saw page 1, okay. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for PA 16-02, public or commercial parking within the Old Town overlay. Based on applicant testimony, public testimony received, and analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report.
Is there a second? All right, it's been moved and seconded that we forward a recommendation of approval on PA 16-02. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you very much. All right. It says going right into adjourning. Does anybody have any further announcements?
I have a personal comment, if you allow me to take a moment. I'm cured.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You put up with me for a year. You helped me get through it. You did. You gave me something else to think about. And you helped me get through it. And I appreciate it. Watch this face. The beard's coming back.
All right. Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, if there's no further announcements, I consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you.